Or this to the shiny new bike your kid's been asking for. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
This is Talk 1470.
Talk 1470.
WNN.
No child in Florida deserves to be bullied, and it's up to parents and adults to recognize the signs. I'm Andy Ford, president of the Florida Education Association. Torn clothes, bruises, loss of appetite, mood changes, or a reluctance to go to school. These all could be signs that a child is the victim of bullying. And as parents, as educators, as adults, we have the power to stand up and stop the bullying, fix it, and prevent it. If you're a parent, the teacher, the custodian, the aunt, the neighbor, or the coach, one caring adult can make all the difference. Take the pledge to be that adult at NEA.org/bullyfree. Students in Florida deserve more caring adults in their lives. That's NEA.org/bullyfree.
A message from the Florida Education Association.
Talk 1470, WWNN, Pompano Beach, Boca Raton, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
I wanted to be in the military since I was a kid.
I served in the United States Air Force.
I served a total of 16 years.
I was deployed 13 times.
On my second deployment, 4 bombs hit my vehicle.
And at 19 years old, that's the first time I ever saw somebody die.
Coming back, I was raging.
I started having pretty horrible nightmares.
I would wake up in the middle of the night, sweats.
I started drinking a lot.
I felt worthless.
I guess I never recognized it in myself.
Eventually, one day I just walked into the VA hospital and said I'd like to see somebody.
Don't suffer alone. You got to find that link with somebody that'll make you let it go.
It all starts with going to the VA. There's a whole community of veterans that just want to help you out.
It's for the guys who couldn't come back, so you owe it to them to live well, because they're not here with their families.
Visit MakeTheConnection.net.
Lupus. It's one of the cruelest, most mysterious diseases on Earth. Lupus strikes without warning, can ravage any part of the body, and has no known cause and no known cure. Its health effects range from a skin rash to a heart attack. Lupus is an unpredictable and misunderstood disease that's difficult to diagnose, hard to live with, and a challenge to treat. Help us solve the cruel mystery. We're the Lupus Foundation of America, the only national force devoted to solving the mystery of lupus. We lead the fight to improve the quality of life for all people affected by this devastating disease. To learn more about lupus and how we can help those who suffer from its brutal impact, visit us online at lupus.org or call the Lupus Foundation of America at 1-800-558-0121. That's 1-800-558-0121.
Hi, this is Michael Blum. Join me on Mondays from 9 to 11 p.m. on WNN for The Michael Blum Show, where we talk about the things you don't want to talk about. We talk about sex, substance abuse, spirituality, and politics. Think, speak, and be heard. Join us on The Michael Blum Show.
If you suffer with diabetes, there's a 25% chance that you'll develop a foot ulcer that can lead to severe health consequences, including amputation. At the Sole Authority, at little or no cost, you can receive your very own therapeutic shoes and custom inserts. Medicare recipients are entitled to 1 pair of quality diabetic shoes and 3 custom inserts. Call the Sole Authority today, 954-597-7060.
What you want to know. What you need to know. Talk 1470. WNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of the station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to the Golf and Travel Show, the place to fine-tune your swing, dress for the course, club, or cruise, and get tips on the best places to play and stay at the right price. Vacation or staycation, host Dan Shub, along with his expert co-hosts and guests, will tell you where to go. To play golf and vacation, that is. Now, here's Dan.
Welcome to the Golf and Travel Show. I'm your host, Dan Schub, and tonight, like we always do, we're going to talk some golf, we'll talk some travel, we'll have a great guest joining us in a few minutes. I'll tell you about him in a minute. And, of course, some of my deals on travel. I've got some real good ones for you tonight. You don't want to miss that. And some travel news, a little bit of golf news. Perhaps we'll throw in a little bit of other things that you just need to know. And in just a little bit, we will be talking to our guest, a fellow by the name of Maurice Allen. I've had the opportunity to see what he can do with a golf club. He can just take a golf ball and send it into orbit. This is a guy who is a professional long drive champion. Just recently won over in Holland a couple of weeks ago on the Long Drive European Tour. He had drives of 376 and 367 yards is what he hit, but he's hit them well over 400. And like I say, I usually see him up in Orlando every year at the PGA show, and this guy can hit. So maybe we'll get a couple of tips from Maurice and find out how we all can hit the ball just a little bit further. Also, I did want to give you all, well, first of all, I think what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about Orlando. Obviously, they've had some issues there. I feel bad for the people of the city, the folks that were affected by the terrorist act that happened up there, as well as the shooting in the nightclub, as well as the child that was dragged by an alligator into a lake up at Disney. And, all of these things are horrible things, and for all three of them to happen to Orlando and the good folks of Orlando is just terrible. And, besides, again, my thoughts and prayers for all of those affected in these horrible tragedies, and any one of them would be horrible enough. But when a city has a run of bad luck like that, it's just, really upsetting for everybody. But, since we are a golf and travel show, and Orlando is either the number one or actually I think maybe the number two tourism destination. And, here we are in Florida, a state that depends on tourism, and Orlando depends on tourism. And I just know that there's so many wonderful things going on up there, and I would hate for people to be afraid to support Orlando and visit Orlando, just like Paris when we were talking about some of the issues that they've been facing. And, let's face it, that accidents and terrorist acts can happen at anywhere in the world. And especially when it comes to that, if you allow them to win by not visiting these places and hurting the local people even further because they depend on the tourist dollars, it just takes a bad situation and makes it worse. So, with all due respect to the folks that, were victims of these tragedies, if you all can take a deep breath and then get back to business as usual and heading up to Orlando, I think that would be a really good thing for that region and for the folks up in Orlando. I also wanted to briefly speak a little bit about some of the golf that's going on. I don't talk too much about the tour events because the show, it does rerun on our sister station, WSBR 740 AM on Sundays. And, for the folks who hear the show Sunday evening at 6, the golf is, this week is already over and last week is kind of old, but we are the Golf and Travel Show, so I did want to mention a couple of things. First of all, last week, we had some locals that were at the top of the leaderboard, and I just wanted to congratulate them and tip my hat. First of all, on the Champions Tour, Bernhard Langer, who lives right here in the Boca area, he won the Senior Players Championship. So, of course, that's a major, and Bernhard is 58 years old and still going strong. So congratulations to him. And also on the PGA Tour, a fellow by the name of Daniel Berger won in Memphis. It was his first win on the PGA Tour. He is from Jupiter, so a Palm Beach County resident. And also, Brooks Koepka was in second. He, too, is a local resident. And I believe both of them went to FSU, where my son graduated from, so they had a lot to cheer for as well. So a lot of local representation. And, of course, as we speak, they're catching up at the U.S. Open for the first round, which had some rain issues. And, who knows what's going to happen there. There are so many great golfers right now, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to predict. We'll see what happens. But this weekend, you will find me in front of my TV watching some of the golf on Fox. Hopefully the quality will be better than it was last year. Another thing, we also talk about a lot of things from week to week, and we have a lot of different guests on the show, and I try and fill everybody in on what goes on as we go forward, to kind of follow up and keep you all in the loop. But about 2 weeks ago, we had on the show a young lady by the name of Carolyn Zellmeyer, and she is from Low TE, Florida, and explained a little bit about some of the work that she's doing with bioidentical hormone therapy, typically for women who are in their middle years, and or men that are in their middle or getting towards their senior years. And obviously somebody like myself was all ears, because me and my friends and my wife and her friends, we've all gone through some of these issues and experienced some of those symptoms. So I did have an opportunity last week before the show to go down there and get a consultation and get some blood work. And, you know, sure enough, looking at the symptoms and then seeing the results of the blood work, and we came to the conclusion that the symptoms that I'm facing as a guy who's, in his 50s, just like a lot of other guys, the work that she does with the bioidentical hormone therapy can actually be helpful. So being the kind of guy that I am, and the kind of guy that I'm the one who goes out there on the road and I check out all these different places and airlines and hotels and golf courses and apparel and equipment, and then I report back to all of you and let you know how it is and if it's the real deal or not. Well, just before the show, of course, I had my first treatment from her, which I didn't even realize, that the way that they do it is they insert it under your skin at the top of your butt. So it's a minor surgical procedure, and I'm a chicken like most guys are. I think any of the women that go for a similar procedure with her, they probably, they're the ones that give birth to kids, and they can handle this stuff a little bit better than us guys. But I'm here to report that not only did I do it, but I'm here on live radio an hour or so afterwards, and I took it like a man. And the next thing that I'm going to have to do now is report back to you all from time to time over the next the therapy lasts, at least the first treatment lasts for maybe 5 or 6 months or so, and I believe in a couple of weeks is when I should start to really feel it in full force. So what I'll do is from time to time I'll report into everybody and let everybody know, as the guinea pig, the guy who is trying this thing out, so all of you don't have to be the first out of the folks that you know. And we'll report back to you and see how it works. So when I have somebody on the show, obviously, or when I recommend a trip whenever possible, it's definitely something that I believe in and whenever possible can vet. So this is no exception. So if any of you want to find out a little bit more about this, you could do what I did. You can go to their website, which is LOWTE Florida.com. Their phone number is 954-791-4498, and this is in Fort Lauderdale, so you could check it out for yourself, or you could just tune in every couple of weeks and hear my updates and find out if anything is changing, any of those symptoms are going away, or if I'm a different person. So if I start to sound different, if the stereo is sounding a little bit different, that could be the head that I'm growing on my shoulder next to my other head, also trying to talk. Just kidding, but again, I feel none the worse for the initial treatment. It wasn't all that scary at all, and if I could do it, anybody could do it. So I'm curious myself. I have no idea what possessed me, but must have been a weak moment, and I guess that's what happens at my age. That's part of the problem. You're just not always as sharp as you used to be, so maybe I could be a little bit sharper. We were talking a little bit about Orlando at the start of the show, and just to kind of take that one step further, I'd like to mention that this past week, Shanghai Disney had its grand opening. So they are moving over to China. The timing perhaps may not be the best because the economy over there has been hurting a little bit. But, that Disney magic, and there are people over in China that do have disposable income. Unfortunately, it's not the masses, but there are people that are doing quite well. And we'll find out. 2 hotels opened up. There's an 800-room Toy Story hotel and 420-room Shanghai Disneyland hotel as well. And, of course, all the other things that you might expect will be there. Things like Mickey Avenue and Tomorrowland and Fantasyland and the Storybook Castle. It's all there, and it'll be very, very interesting to see how this plays out in China. I think what we're going to do is we're going to save some of this other travel news for a little bit later in the show, as well as Dan's deals, which you don't want to miss. We do have some local and, as usual, some all over the world, and some very, very good deals. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to take our first break so that we can have some time to talk with our guest, Maurice Allen, professional long drive champion. So he'll be with us in just a minute or two, and you won't want to miss that. So stay tuned for more of the Golf and Travel Show. We'll be right back. It's time for a quick message from our sponsor, Labor Finders. If your business needs industrial workers or if you're looking for work, you got to call Labor Finders, because Labor Finders places for temporary or temporary to hire opportunities for skilled, semi-skilled, or general labor positions such as plumbers, electricians, concrete workers, forklift operators, office clerical workers, and so much more. Labor Finders has almost 200 offices nationwide. Near here in Boca Raton, they have offices in Homestead, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, and in Jupiter. So if you need legal, insured, hard workers, or if you're looking for work, call Labor Finders toll-free at 800-864-7749. That's 800-864-7749, or visit laborfinders.com.
More minutes before I say bye-bye. Oh, driving man. Oh, driving man. Oh, driving man.
And we are back. And talking about a hard driving man, this guy can hit that ball so far. And, you know, that's what the women like, so it kind of makes it rough on the rest of us. But I've had an opportunity to see him hit that ball far. This was not in competition, but he's been competing, he's been winning, and maybe he can give us a little bit of information as to how we can all hit the ball a little bit further, maybe a little tip or a secret. We'll see what we can come up with. But I'd like to introduce to you long drive champion Maurice Allen. Maurice, are you there?
I am here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And yourself?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. Just getting off the golf course just in time to make the interview, so it worked out perfect.
Well, great. I'm glad. And of course, I've gotten to see you at the Tour Edge events several times over the past few years. We've used your drive always, never mine. So thank you for that. But before we talk a little bit about what you've been up to lately and your tour over in Europe and your big win, why don't you explain to the folks out there just a little bit about your background? I know you're a local guy from South Florida, went to school in Florida, and what is it that how does a career twist and turn that you end up being a long drive champion? So can you just give us a little bit of the beginnings of this all?
I guess the way how it boils down to it is if you look at 7 Days in Utopia, they always talk about, you don't choose the game chooses you. I had absolutely zero intentions of playing golf. Didn't look at it. I knew about the game, but wasn't anywhere on my radar. So throughout the course of life, I played other sports, football, track, volleyball, baseball, dabbled in some bobsledding and all kinds of stuff like that, but I just never, golf wasn't something I wanted to do, and when I got too old, or I guess not good enough to compete at a high level of other things, the only thing I had left was this, and a guy named Kenny Knox and Steve Harrison, they had a golf store in Tallahassee when I was in school at Florida A&M, and Steve bet me I wasn't athletic enough to hit a golf ball, and I hit a 7-iron, 240 yards, and he told me to go try long drive, and then I got hooked from the first competition, and I got my butt beat pretty bad, but, it was one of those things where the guy told me I was plenty long, and I had great talent in this game and in the sport of golf as a whole. So I stuck with it and went through a bunch of bumps and bruises, but seemed to work out so far so good.
Now, another thing that I find interesting whenever I hear about it is the kind of equipment that a fellow like you uses to compete. And, I've heard stories where guys are using like 4 or 6 degrees of loft on their drivers. And why don't you explain a little bit about the equipment that you use to be able to hit the ball 400 yards?
Yeah, so the first thing that everybody needs to understand, every club that you see on whether it's the old Remax Long Drive Championships or the stuff that you see now, which is sponsored by Callaway on the Golf Channel, all of those clubs are USGA legal. So if a person wanted to go and play in the Open with those clubs this weekend, they could. The big difference is they're right around the legal limit as far as length is concerned. All the heads are conforming. The big difference would be the loft. So a typical long drive guy will use anything from a 2-degree to a 6-degree loft. Some guys may use a 7, but not many people are that high up. So the average guy uses about a 4-degree loft would be the average number that you see. I've heard of some zeros. I've even heard of some negatives. But that's the kind of stuff you're looking at. The shafts are 2 and 3x as far as the stiffness on the shaft, but you have to remember it's an inch or 2 inches, sometimes 2.5 inches longer than a normal driver. So, if you were to cut those down to a normal 44, 45-inch driver length, you're talking about anywhere from a 4 to an 8x stiffness on the driver. So that part's where it gets a little interesting.
What is your swing speed?
Fastest I was clocked last year on TrackMan was 151. On Flight Scope, it was 153. A couple of years ago at the PGA Learning Center down there in Port St. Lucie, they had me at 162.7.
Wow. That's just crazy. Now, and these long, so when you travel, I mean, when I travel and I go play golf, obviously I've got a set of clubs and, you know, all different kinds of clubs, and I put it in my bag and I put it in a travel bag. When you travel, do you obviously, I'm assuming, take a golf bag, and does it have nothing but drivers in it?
When I travel, for the most part, when I go to a competition, it really depends. I carry about anywhere from 12 to 17 drivers, all different types of setups that you're looking at. I do carry irons and things of that nature as well, but the travel case looks, for lack of better words, like a body bag. It's this big, huge stuffed case, and I always get something from the person checking me in at Delta in Atlanta. I'm like, oh, there's got to be more in there than golf clubs. And I'm like, no, we can bet if you want to. I've gotten a few upgrades on a bet like that. They think there's a lot more in there, and it's always overweight. But traditionally what you'll do is you'll see different flexes as far as the shafts are concerned, different setups, because the club builder will build some for a draw, some for a fade, things of that nature, so that you don't have to try to change your swing to do it. The beautiful thing now with the interchangeable heads is you don't have to carry so many lofts. Mm-hmm. Before, when I first started, I had to carry so many different lofts in so many different setups, so that it was absolutely crazy. I've heard stories of Jason Zuback with 2 staff bags full of drivers because he had them set up for different conditions. So when you get to the pinnacle of the sport, the top guys have so many different setups just to base it off conditions, because you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if you're in the face, crosswind, if it's a rolling grid, if it's a carry grid, all kinds of stuff like that you have to really deal with.
Now, I have a question. When you're using a driver that has such little loft, you know, the rest of us golfers, we know that the less loft, the more difficult it is to hit the ball straight, the more likely you are to put spin on the ball and, you know, end up in the rough or the woods or whatever. So when you're competing, what is more difficult, hitting the ball further so that you can obviously get the distance you need, or making sure that the shots that you hit far stay in the field of play so that you can actually use them?
Well, I think because of the way the format goes. Remember, we used to get 6 chances. Now we get 8. Mm-hmm. So when you're hitting 8 balls consecutively, it gives you the opportunity to somewhat get into a groove. So if you flare one out to the right, you take a moment and you really analyze exactly what you were doing. You have to pay attention to your body. What were you trying to do? What did you feel? What went wrong? Versus when you're in a round of golf, you get 1 ball, 1 shot, and then your next shot is completely different, unless you're reteeing, of course, over and over again. But with us, it's 8 consecutive balls with the driver, so it gives you a chance to map it out, feel things out. A lot of guys spend so much time on technique. They spend so much time on the biomechanics of the golf swing. So remember, with us, being 1 degree off may be for you guys, it may be 10 yards. Well, for us, it's 30 to 70 yards.
Right.
So it is kind of hard to keep everything together as far as keeping it in the grid, but you still can't back up off of the speed, because the way how the sports right now, I mean, the difference between the number 1 guy and the number 25 guy is not much. So no one has a point where they can say, oh, I'm just going to swing 80% and I'm going to beat the brakes off everybody. That's not going to happen. I mean, everybody has to bring in every ball, every set.
So the difference between you keeping your shot straight and me keeping mine is probably the difference between me and that guy who's 20 or 30 years older than me, hits the ball like 100 yards because, you know, he's 85 and it goes straight every time, and he still beats my score.
Yeah, I guess you could look at it that way. That's one way of looking at it. But the other side of it is, most of us, as far as long drivers are concerned, we get in a lot of trouble when we actually try to slow down, because, you know, most people who play golf, or at least who teach golf, understand how important sequencing is. So if our sequence gets thrown off, you can be in a million different places, and then you really don't know what's going on. So it's hard to find that balance, and I think that's why we practice and we train so much, is really to figure out whatever that balance may be for each individual.
Now, another story that's out there. I don't know if it's a misconception or not, but I can ask about you and maybe some of the other guys out there on the tour. But they typically say that if you're a long driver, you can't shoot too well at golf. You probably don't have much of a short game. Is that true, or is that not true?
That is absolutely a lie. Jamie Sadlowski proved that wrong this year when he almost qualified for the U.S. Open. Josh Cruz out of Texas is almost qualified. Justin Moose out of Pennsylvania is almost qualified. We've had quite a few guys. Steve Monroe out of Clearwater. There's so many guys. Mitch McDowell's out of Arizona. Brian Pallett was a world champion. He was an awesome golfer. Bobby Wilson was an awesome golfer. I mean, the list goes on and on and on about how many guys can actually get out there and play amazing and great golf. I think the big difference, or the harder part of it, would be to go and long drive 1 week and then try to play a stroke play event the next week. They're just two completely different beasts. We do have one guy on the tour currently. His name's Paul Howell. He's out of North Carolina. He's currently doing that. He shot 2 under in a round in a mini tour event, and then turned around the next week and went to a long drive event on a very narrow grid and did very well. I think he finished in the top 4. So it's tough. Week in and week out, it's probably mentally draining, but I think that would be the bigger issue. But if we get in a groove where we're playing stroke play events for 7, 8, 9 weeks, think about it. The average long driver hits the ball so much further than everybody else. I hit a pitching wedge 185 yards. So you don't have to pull out the driver. As long as you have course management and you can keep the ball somewhat in play.
Okay, so
it's a lot easier for
it's a myth. You guys can do it all. So we want to clear that up. Now, if any of our listeners, if there was one bit of information you could give them so that they can hit their drives a little bit longer, what would you tell them to do?
2 things. The first thing is stay loose. Most people think when you get ready to crush the ball that you get the upper body tight and the hands get all flexed up and everything like that to hit the ball hard. Ooh, I'm going to knock it out. That doesn't work. And then the second thing is stay in touch with your sequence. Whatever your sequence, whatever your coach is giving you, or whatever you found out at the range on your own that allows you to hit the ball in a sweet spot in the center of the club face, really focus on that side of it. And when you put those things, when you keep your hands, you keep your body loose, and the sequencing is on point, a lot of amazing things can happen to you.
Are you going to be competing in the States at all in the near future?
Yeah, actually I'll be in Memphis next week. And then after that, I think I've got, the next 4 weeks completely out of the country. I go to Japan, then Prague, then I'll do an exhibition at the USGA, back to Japan, and then to Budapest, and then I'll be back in the States again. But there are a few events going on in the States. There's one in North Carolina, the 8th, 9th, and 10th of July. There's one in Memphis next weekend, and then there's another one in Salt Lake City. I think that's the 27th and 28th of July as well. So there's a lot of great long drive going on in the States.
It's an interesting life you lead. Are you still sponsored by Volvic?
Yeah, still working really, really good with Volvic. Volvic actually announced this year that they'll be the official ball of the World Long Drive Championships, which makes that a really good thing for them because they're taking a ball, the Vista IV ball, which is a ball that was created to give people a little bit of distance, but it still has great feel around the greens compared to the top flight ball that we were playing before. Your average tour player or a great, low-digit handicapper say, oh, no, I'm never going to play the top flight because I can't do anything with it around the greens. The Volvic ball gives you anywhere from 5 to 15 extra yards and still gives that great touch around the greens. Absolutely amazing ball. It's been dominating the long drive tour in Europe for the past 3 years. Some really, really big numbers. There are a few people who are on the LPGA that still play that ball, so that ball is absolutely amazing.
Well, they got some great colors, I know, especially for the women. They love that. So it's a great ball. I was actually one of the first, if not the first, to private label their golf ball.